ladies and gentlemen, live on your screen, Farmer Jones. Now, for those that don't know Farmer Jones, I didn't know who he was until just a week ago. We've had many good conversations. He's an attorney of some kind. We're not going to reveal that, but he has a lot of experience in dissecting situations and actions, and he has a lot of good talking points. Come check out his channel here, Farmer Jones on YouTube, and you will be enlightened. Farmer Jones, pleasure to have you on. How you doing?
Thank you, Diamond. Let me give you one official well now. That's for my campers out there. Yeah, I've been doing my channel a couple of years, and for some amazing reason, I only have like 6,000 subscribers. I had a guy comment the other day, said, "Hey man, FJ, they call me." He said, "I've been following you for 2 years, and the number of subscribers has never changed. How come?" I said, "How the hell do I know? Why don't you ask them?" I said, "Either they're, what do we say, suppressing me, or maybe somebody's protecting me to make sure my little voice is heard, because you never know. All it takes is a couple of high-quality heads that listen." And I know that I have some high-quality heads that listen. We'll say retired, very interesting people. And you're fascinating, and you know Dr. Paul Cottrell, and I found him on, well, I spoke with him and told him about Mundt Modernization. And one of my viewers from New Zealand sent me a link. Cottrell is talking with Diamond at Oppenheimer Ranch Project. And I had heard of Oppenheimer Ranch Project, so I clicked on it. I listened. I said, "Oh, this is great." And I loved at the end when you were screaming in your high-pitched voice. I said, "Yeah, he and I would be a very interesting thing. He could do he could do the high end, and I'll do the deep end." There you go. So that would be fun. Well, how are you today, Diamond? How's
I'm excellent.
The old ranch?
The ranch as well. I've spent the last 48 hours bear-proofing my hives, and I have to shift everything around just to do that. So, but more importantly, let me for the people listening, let's talk about that. So you sent Paul the information on Mundt. He immediately contacted me almost an hour later to give me this information. And so I perused it and I was like, we have to do a show on this. And that is how these social media platforms like YouTube are actually bringing up journalism. We are actually sharing information cross-culturally, worldwide, and with actual people that want to listen. So we're actually doing scientific investigation here on these topics. We are not puppets with propaganda and scripts. We are using our brains to get to the bottom.
I agree.
Yeah. So this is just all completely organic that you and I should be just talking right now.
I just had to put on my shades, man, so we could be even. But I generally don't wear them indoors. That's for my outdoor show. And I get to say, we are live. All right, so you're right. I had a chat with Paul because I needed to fill him in on some stuff that he didn't know about. I said, "Hey, man, we need to talk because there's a lot of stuff that you don't know and you need to know." Because I was watching him and I liked him, and he wanted to get hold of George Webb, and I've been talking with George for several years, you know, so I put them together and they did their thing. But when I was talking to Paul, I think we were on the phone for Skype for 3 hours, and I said, "By the way," towards the end of it, I said, "Are you familiar with the Mundt Modernization Act?" He goes, "No, what the hell is that?" I said, "All right, you got your computer?" He said, "Yeah." And all of our viewers should do this, either now or after the show. Just type in your browser, U.S. lifts propaganda ban, and see what comes up. And you'll see a list of stuff talking about Mundt and the Mundt Modernization Act. There's one article, and of course Google has shifted it up, in the Atlantic, which is really from the Atlantic Council. So this is like the globalist run operation. And in that stupid article, it says, "Well, this is a great idea to have domestic propaganda because this adds transparency and we can see where our taxpayer money is going." They actually say this. And I'm like, wait a minute. If you don't know it's propaganda, how in the hell is it adding transparency, right? So that's just laughable. But all the other articles are pretty strong on there. You know what I mean? So let me give you a couple of points on this. You had mentioned that House bill. What the hell number was it in 2012?
Yeah, it's HR
57, what is it, 51 something?
5736. HR
Okay,
5736.
that had origin. Okay, that had originally come up in May, I believe, of that year, and it was resoundingly rejected. So the House didn't like that. They said this is garbage, and they bounced it. What happened is it miraculously got slithered into the NDAA in December of 2012 on a must-sign document, and of course, it got signed into law. It became effective. Even this is slimy. 180 days after being signed into law. Why not immediately? No, it got signed. So it becomes effective in July of 2013, like the second or third, right around there. Um, Now, the other thing is, and there's some debate, is how much of it was funded. I believe it was funded too. I heard a figure of 5 or 8, make that $8 billion. I'm thinking, damn, $8 billion, you could buy the network for that. Well, that was then. Now, I don't know how much CNN costs. But it's a huge problem. And as you and I have discussed, and I've mentioned repeatedly on my channel, this is basically, it eviscerates the First Amendment. And everybody says, well, freedom of speech. Well, they forget about freedom of assembly, right? That's also an element. But the biggest one is freedom of the press, and Congress shall make no law abridging the free press, or something to that. I don't have my Constitution here. But by creating a state-funded media, state-controlled media, you have destroyed the First Amendment. There is no more free press. If they're allowed to pay the media for the propaganda, all it does is cover the media from being accused of fake news, right? So they'll say, well, we didn't do anything wrong. It's legal, and we were being great citizens because we decided that we're going to help the agency, and we're doing our American patriotic duty. So you can't even yank their license for it. You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Very clever. So it's treason. Any idiot senator or congressman, one who, they submitted it, should be charged with treason and removed from office. They take an oath to uphold the Constitution, uphold, protect, and defend from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And as we've discussed, I have a huge problem with what's going on right now. Okay, we've got the governors, the mayors, these little psycho demagogues out there, city councils, county commissioners, stomping on everybody's right on the pretense of this COVID garbage. And the bottom line is, every one of those draconian laws is violating their oath of office. They're not protecting the Constitution. They're not upholding the Constitution, and it makes them a traitor. So what do you think? You hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, they certainly should all be liable for going against the Constitution, and they should be held accountable in
Well,
some way. Additionally, there is monetary repercussions that are untold. Currently, we don't even know the effects. We will in a few months. But what these oligarchic governors have done is literally strangled the free people illegally. And so there needs to be some type of class action suit against the American people versus these governors. We need to take them out of office and hold them accountable. Now, the problem is that there are preemptive laws in place to prevent you from suing public officials, prevent you from suing media outlets or even social media groups. And amazingly, our president signed an executive order to allow the general citizen to now litigate against these social media contracts or censorship. So if YouTube takes down your content, you can sue them for the value of that. The problem I see is that the general citizen doesn't have the wherewithal or the money to hire the right lawyer. So how does that help us? How does Trump's executive order actually help the citizens, or doesn't it?
well, I got you. Couple of things. First, the executive order I haven't read, and I figure it's a lot of fluff. Don't forget, his order can't create legislation. Legislation has to come from the legislative branch. So he might be, and I want to see what he's done, how much of it is enforceable or whatnot. The real issue with the social media is this, what is it, Section 230? I forgot what section it is that gives them a shield from liability, calling themselves a platform and not a publisher. Therefore, they're not susceptible to the libel laws and slander, right? But they are clear. They've overstepped their bounds. They've they've narrowed their notion of a platform to that of a publisher by censoring and just suppressing thought. They're editing content, so they become editors, which means they're a publisher. One publisher might do a book on this or a program on that, and the other, right? So you have left wing, right wing, all that nonsense. But aside from that, if they're a publisher, now they've got a problem, and that would be the litigation. That would bring them outside of the protection of this. What would we call it? A safe harbor. Okay. Now I think they're talking about legislation, and I heard a senator the other day. I forgot which one, but he was saying he was going to be introducing legislation to remove that section. Now, I'm not briefed up on it because I wasn't prepared to dive into this with you as counsel, but I'm not going to. However, that's the nutshell version, right? Number one. Number two, what I see as a huge problem with this lockdown freeze and what are they calling essential businesses versus non-essential businesses? Well, that's great. So I'm a business, and they say you're not essential, and therefore you're out of business. Well, if you've got land and they want to build a road on it, they exercise the thing called eminent domain, and what happens is they pay you for that. So if they just shut down my business, they can pay me for it. They bought it. You break it, you pay it. What was that going into Iraq with Colin Powell? The Pottery Barn, if you break it, you own it. Well, imagine that. So I think there should be, put it in colloquial terms, a shitload of lawsuits saying, hey, you wrecked my business, buy it. And don't buy it at today's value, buy it at the value the day before you locked it down. Okay? So I still have huge problems with what they're doing, saying, you can't have more than 10 people. Where'd that number come from? Right? Arbitrary figure. Where's any kind of evidence that that's the magic? No. Why isn't it 9? Why isn't it 11? What if I want to have an Easter picnic and I want to play Jesus Christ and I want 12 people around me and that's 13? I violated their statute because that's going to make it what? A COVID hotspot? Give me a break. It's nonsense. So therefore, what? You can't go to a wedding. You can't go to a funeral. You can't go to a picnic.
Well, I could argue. I could argue
because they say, or at church. Oh, wait, we
yeah,
could talk
I could
church.
I could argue
you
that
can't go to church.
we keep groups of 10 6 feet apart, and they're all separate groups. So even though I invited 100 people,
Sure.
what if I mandated that everyone stay in packets of 10 6 feet apart? They couldn't get to us. It's so arbitrary and it's made up. This is like police state narrative. You know what I mean? You make up a fake
It
law
is.
and you enforce it based on nothing. It's like, okay, today.
Well, no, it's not a fake law. No,
No,
it's not a fake law. It's a real law. And let's talk about our happy riots. I knew this was going to happen because we're going to end up riffing on this one here. So first of all, it's a law based on garbage. It's fabricated to suit an arbitrary figure. They pull it out of their back pocket and say 10, just like 6 feet apart. Where'd that come from? Just like wear your mask. The science says the masks do more harm than good unless you have the virus and are spewing it, coughing and sneezing, in which case, why do they need to tell people don't go out? I mean, what, you didn't know that? It's like, and if you go out, you stay away from sick people. Duh. And when you come back, you wash your hands. I mean, this is pretty basic stuff. But I guess there's a lot of morons that just do Facebook and don't know that. They don't talk about that on Facebook and on the
yeah.
trending stuff on YouTube.
I mean, I'm always discussing the piles of bodies in the road, all the deaths. I've never seen any of that. And I've been driving around many states over the last 3 months. I've been in most hospitals I've been in are vacant. The parking lots are empty. I went to a Presbyterian hospital in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, in the center of the city. And we were one of just a few dozen people in the whole facility. And when we met with our surgeon, the first thing he did was take off his mask in the office and say, this is such BS, such nonsense. And please be comfortable.
He said BS, or did he say bullshit? Come on, what did he say? Did he say BS, or did he say bullshit?
He said fucking nonsense, and he took his mask off.
Oh, good.
And he's the top guy at the hospital. So we can see what's going on with, in general, based on observation. And based observations are
Yeah,
going against what we are seeing on the media. And this all comes
of
right
course.
back full circle to the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act. What we're
Well,
watching
hold
is,
on. Let's
go
not
ahead.
wait, let's not jump too quick. It might just be the power of the manipulation of big pharma, because the game here, as we see, is, as Fauci says, behind. Wait, I got to put my cigarette down. He sits behind his little thing. He says, "The vaccine, the vaccine." Right. This is the podium for normal people. Right. The vaccine.
Are you
So that's the
insinuating he's
deal.
short?
And you, no, I'm suggesting that the podium is way too tall for him. Don't trust
Uh,
dwarfs.
uh,
They'll chew your ankles. Yeah.
well, and
Anyway, the
don't
bottom line
trust
is
someone
so.
in a position like Fauci that's been in there for decades. Clearly, he has been infiltrated by someone or something. I mean,
Oh my God, come on. Have you looked at his background? I mean, it's unbelievable. And I watch Amazing Polly, and she does great work on this, and discovered that his wife is a woman named Grady who uses her maiden name, and she is in charge, wait for it, the NIH for medical ethics, bioethics. Oh, nice. And she's also in charge of human experimentation. Really? Now, are they using soldiers at Fort Detrick? They could use people in the military and shoot them up because they've signed away their rights when they enlist. Or are they using prisoners? Or are they using the Chinese? Let's not forget how Fauci shifted that nice $3.7 million to Wuhan, right? That he wasn't supposed to do to continue the gain of function nonsense with the viruses, which is arguably intended to circumvent American law that said we're no longer chimericizing viruses, making mixed monsters. So they outsource it. Then you got to connect it to Chapel Hill. You got to connect it to Duke. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the Fauci is there. So his wife does human experimentation. I'm sure China would be absolutely thrilled to deal with their concentration camp dissidents and experiment on them. I see no problem. They're probably also using them for organ harvesting as well, because communism is great. Anyway, we could go off on that rant for a few minutes, but we won't. I want to bring it back to the Smith-Mundt thing. So I don't know. Do you think the Smith-Mundt is behind it? The fake news, this is COVID, but before this, we had all the fake news. You had CNN, the Communist News Network, or the Clinton News Network, and MSNBC. I've never seen anything like it. And the reporters and the questions, and the fact that if you'll watch Fox, and I was never a fan of Fox, but that's the only thing I'll watch now, just those 3 shows at night. I get my news and info from YouTube and from online. That's it. It's amazing. And the problem is you really can't get reliable sources. There's tons of garbage there. So you really have to spend extra time, you know? So it's important to find quality people who have credibility. And if they tell you something, you know it's true. And what I do on my little channel is the power of my channel is the links. I aggregate all of the top stories. I put together the explanation of it and how I see it fitting in and what it could mean. And I'll slap the links in the show notes, right? So I like to cite the authority for my assertion. There's a lot of channels that'll say this is what happened and this and that, but they don't put any links in. Like, what the hell is that? That's no good, especially since you have the means of doing it.
I mean, that takes time, and it also takes integrity to put the links down. The largest portion of my week is
Right.
adding the links to my videos. It takes the longest amount of time. You know
Yeah.
that in a single 30-minute podcast, I can talk about 20 or 40 current articles, and all of those links have to be below, or I have no basis of speaking about it as an authority figure to the public, because I want them to check what I'm saying. I want them to do their own research, do their own homework. You cannot listen to a reporter like you or I and take what we say at face value. You have to get into critical thinking. You correct me, I correct you when we have a conversation. We're utilizing our broad
Right. Right.
base of knowledge and we're correcting each other. We're bringing each other up to get to the truth. That's not what happens in the media.
Right. And be susceptible to reason. And that's what's different than propaganda. Right. And when you keep repeating the message loud enough and long enough on the biggest lie, what was that? Goebbels was saying that, or Goebbels under Hitler. take the biggest lie and repeat it long enough, and people will believe it. So it sounds like this whole COVID thing. You're familiar with the Event 201, where they did the plandemic right there with Johns Hopkins. Now, I mentioned a couple of people here. I mentioned Polly, but Ole Damagard, I had sent you the link. He did an amazing interview with Sarah Westall, and you should throw that in here, right, for your audience if they haven't seen it. Ole has broken the code, and he is gifted at seeing through the false flag, the propaganda, the manipulations. It's incredible. And he evidently broke out, and in the story with Sarah, there's two parts. They broke it down to 30-minute parts, part one, part two. But it's well worth watching. And I sat and I listened to it last night. And he ties in the fact that the CDC was created in 1946, right after the war, arguably under Operation Paperclip, set up by Nazis. Well, now, and the CIA, and the UN, and the World Health Organization. So you're looking at this saying, maybe, and I commented on this in this morning, my little show. I said, hey, maybe that was the reason for World War II, was to bring in the whole New World Order, which they started in 1897, the world takeover of the Illuminati, right? And we had World War I to separate it out, to free up Palestine, and thus that could be given over to Rothschild for exchange to having the Americans come into World War I. And that became the current state of Israel. Interesting. So, was World War II, who funded that? Was it Rothschild? Was it Warburg? Was it Schiff? Was it all the international bankers? James Corbett did an amazing thing. But the UN comes into effect, and it was like take two on, what was the first one called? The League of Nations. So you have the Hegelian dialectic, right? Here's the problem. Massive war, while all of the money bankers make tons of money. Everybody's mortified. But the appearance on its face is we save the world. But communism actually spread. Russia expanded, took over Eastern Europe. China became communist China, 2 years later in 48. So this is very curious. Then there's the UN, and they're given a seat at the table. Okay, and now, how do we prevent war like this from happening? Let's have a UN. Let's have a one world government. And now you insert the whole the underpinnings of the World Health Organization, and you got this guy Tedros, who's a Marxist militant. You've got and there's great news today just came out from China, and Trump made the argument, they're being too nice to China. We give them more money. They should pay more attention to us. Well, they didn't disclose Tedros's crimes against humanity when he was in Ethiopia. They didn't disclose Tedros's essentially the bribes he is receiving from China rebuilding Ethiopia's infrastructure, but the billions of dollars. I'd like to hear you say that in a high voice. The billions of dollars. Okay. And the kicker on OAN today, Liz, what's her name? Not Taylor. What's her name? Liz, the one on the blonde on OAN.
Yeah.
At any rate, it turns out that what do they call these people that are the minister, the goodwill, minister of goodwill ambassador for the WHO, is nobody other than President Xi's wife from China. Are you kidding me?
Well.
And who appointed her to that position? Tedros. Well, now. Unbelievable. You all right, man? You all right, man?
Yeah.
Pack that out of there. I hope that's not COVID. Jesus.
Yeah, it's definitely. I'm dying. All right, Farmer. We talked
smoking too much. Man.
We talked for 24 minutes. I believe that the people have gotten a good idea who you are, and we've got your YouTube channel up here, so they're going to all come over here and subscribe. And you and I are going to marinate a little bit on the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act and some other things that are developing.
Right.
And we plan on doing a podcast in a few days where we will break it down for the general public. Yeah.
Right. Well, wait, there's more news. But wait, there's more. So Smith-Mundt was amplified, like Marshall amplification. All right, you good?
Yeah,
Damn.
we
I did
talked
one
about
show
that.
like that. I was
That's
hacking and dying.
2017.
Yeah.
It was amplified.
Right. It was at the end of 16, the same thing, at the end of 16, effective in 17. And this is called, I sent it over to you. What the hell is that thing called? The Foreign Information Propaganda, to Fight Foreign Information Act. Oh, yeah. So that, in conjunction with our legal propaganda in the United States, means that fighting foreign information can be done here. Well, I don't know. It seems to me like the foreign information is being promoted here. And we've got to really question who the hell the CIA is working for, in my opinion. And then we have to question, you have the Broadcast Board of Governors and the State Department. Well, we know we had little Hillary running the State Department. And I heard the other day that during her term as Secretary of State, there was no Inspector General in the State Department. And they're all carrying on because who fired the IG? Was that Pompeo or was it Trump? Fired the IG in the State Department. Interesting. And the media is howling. Yeah, interesting. But she didn't have one there. So she has completely infused her lunatics in there. And there's a lot of good evidence, and it's coming out bits and pieces. Diana West did a couple of good interviews, and she wrote the book, and I haven't read it yet. It's called I want to say The Thin Red Line. But what it's talking about is the infiltration of communist influences at the highest levels of our intelligence communities. Like Brennan is an admitted communist. Okay, now how in the hell do they let him? He voted for the Communist Party back in the 70s, at the peak of the Cold War. How do they let a guy like that come into the agency? And how does a guy like that become the head of the agency that Obama appoints him if there's not an agenda? Same thing with Comey. Comey was big into the, do we want to call it socialism or communist? This is according to Diana West, and it was brilliant. And then you look at Hillary. And what is Hillary doing? She's following not Saul Alinsky. What was the other one? Bill Ayers, who was the Weatherman, which was a radical kind of a socialist Marxist group, which is the first phases to full-blown communism. So you've got all these high levels of power. And you look at the so-called corruption in the FBI, you look in the DOJ and you wonder, where are the prosecutions? And, that's great. They've got Durham looking into this. We'll see if anything gets prosecuted. If they forget or prevent or don't bring in a corroborating witness on something, then you can't sell it to the grand jury. Interesting.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
Yeah, just like the insider traders at the top levels of the government will not be held accountable for cashing in on the COVID pandemic, most people at the highest level never get prosecuted. It's just a show. And what are your final thoughts?
I commented on that the other day. Well, they're continuing their look at Burr, but they dropped it against Feinstein and the other two. Okay, so that sounds like a little quid pro quo, doesn't it, Joe? Right? Fire the prosecutor, you get the money. Okay. But in this case, they let them off the hook because, well, we need a bill passed, Senator. One hand washes the other. And maybe they were teaching Burr a lesson. We'll see what happens to him.
What do you
He was
think
the head of
about
the committee.
The early release of Trump's attorney in the book he's going to release before the election?
The early release. Who's releasing? Cohen?
Yeah, Cohen's got a book deal. And
Who? Cohen?
Cohen has got a book deal, and he's going to write the book.
And who's sponsoring that book deal? And what's his what do they call that? The prepayment, the advance?
I don't think any
How
of
much
that's,
do they give him?
I
Like
don't think
Obama.
it's probably
Obama got what, $20 million?
Yeah.
What do you think that is, man? That's a payoff, buddy. That's a payoff. That's a wash. Pull the books from Obama's book. Let's see how many friggin' books sold. Here's your $20 million. Agency work. Uh-huh.
I didn't buy it. Did you buy it?
Donations. And then foundations.
Yeah, who bought that?
No, hell no. I didn't read it either. I wouldn't. The one that may have been good was his first one, right? The Audacity of Hope. I didn't read that either.
Well, it made him famous, that's for sure.
But I got to tell you, honestly, Diamond, man, honestly, I was an Obama supporter back in 08. I said, holy shit, this guy is eloquent. He's intelligent. He's a great orator. And he's the voice of reason, right? You compare him to Bush and Cheney and Rice and Gonzalez. And who was the other clown in that? Oh, Rumsfeld. Those bunch of lunatics. They all should have been charged with treason. They legalized waterboarding. Okay. As Jesse Ventura said, hey, you give me Dick Cheney and a waterboard, give me 20 minutes, I'll have him admitting to the Sharon Tate murders. Okay, so now you interrogate them all as to whether or not they committed treason. Okay, and now the legal question is when they all admit it to get the waterboarding to stop. The question is that admissible evidence?
Yeah.
Well, now, unbelievable. The whole thing is just such a cluster. Yeah, but the corruption is breaking down. I mentioned George Webb. He did an amazing little show this morning with a guy named Bill Taylor who found some huge documents. You should take a look at it. It date back to 1927 and 1946 or 47 from a place called Gibson Island. I think of Gibson guitars. Stop yawning. The flies are going to go in there. Cover your mouth. You're in the barn. the Gibson Island, I think of Gimlet Island, right? But it's Gibson Island. And all of the bigwigs were doing major money deals and planning on like the eugenics game. I'm like, what? So this bullshit goes back to the 20s. This was fascinating, and it's evidently on the site. I haven't read the document. I want to see that too. So this then becomes what? The CDC, the Gates, the vaccines. And I told you earlier, last point, Del Bigtree pulled the insert from one of the vaccines for the flu, and it shows it's a 0.6% death rate. It's like, wait a minute, what's COVID? Is that or less? So take the regular flu vaccine, and you're at the same place as the COVID. Why are we worried?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? How crazy is this
why
shit?
isn't the mainstream media actually doing journalism, and why haven't they read the instructions, so to speak? I mean, this is just basic reporting.
Well, have you listened?
Basic journalism.
No. They follow Twitter. That's their new source of information. Idiots. No, because it's all bullshit. It's an agenda. I'm wondering who gives them their talking points, who prepares their questions when they terrorize Trump at a press conference. They are most antagonistic, what do we want to call them, just argumentative, provocative questions. I don't know how he has the patience to answer them. You know, it's like they just listen to the questions. They're objectionable, right? Assuming facts not in evidence, leading. Well, you said, and then there's always like, well, you said this. Can you prove that? Wait, come on. I don't know. If I were, it's very, very hard to play. But the antagonism is unbelievable. I like this new little secretary they got, the press girl.
Oh, yeah.
Kayla.
Yeah.
Or Kaylee, what's her last name? McEnany?
Yeah.
She's outstanding. She walks in with a list. Well, what about this? Have you asked Obama about why Flynn was being unmasked? Did you ask this and this and this and this? Well, let's see. We have a 3-day weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe. Let's go. When we come back, let's see how many people got answers to those questions.
And you know how many
But
have
on that
answers?
note, they asked her a question yesterday.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, nobody asked. They don't want to. That's not their job. Their job is promote Obama, destroy Trump, and because he's a threat to the deep state. Or, here's some food for thought. You're yawning again. I'm sorry I'm boring you, man. The deep state, the question is this whole thing a school play? Is it all fake wrestling, right? Where they attack him and he fights back to make him look like the victim. The impeachment was a joke. That should have been summarily dismissed by the Senate. Period. Not heard. The whole thing, the corruption level is unbelievable. The whole thing is a school play. It's all theater. Now, how much of it is Trump aware of? Is Trump not aware of Smith-Mundt? You're going to tell me Pompeo's not aware of it? And you had the three elements, just for our viewers, is you got the agency, the CIA, and then you've got the State Department, and then you have the Broadcast Board of Governors, who they changed the name, by the way. They're now like the American World Media Group or something like that. So that's terrific. And as you know, right, Hollywood has played a huge role in doing the propaganda. And that role is confirmed, even just at Wikipedia, you look at it. In Wikipedia, they establish back, I want to say in the 60s, where the agency wanted to outsource their propaganda to Hollywood because they figure they make a better product. Makes sense. So there's your deep ties. Now, who says what that propaganda is going to be? Are they the leftists out of Hollywood to start with, and then they use them further, and then Laurel Canyon and rock and roll? That's
Yeah,
why I
well,
like British rock.
and that's why I like you. All of this information is being presented in plain sight.
Right,
it's hidden in a certain way, and so the messaging is more
right.
subliminal. It's not direct. And the media is a propaganda unit. I mean, we can just see the first 3 years of Trump's term that almost all of the reporting was based on false information. We've even proven this. And so the media is simply creating,
Oh yeah,
like you said,
fake news.
a school
Absolutely.
play, and we're in the play, and people are gobbling it up. And we're here to point
We're in the
out,
audience. We're
yeah,
just sitting here.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're here to point out what's going on, and we're going to be breaking this down in more detail in
Right.
future podcasts. It was a pleasure talking to you. Do you have any final words for our listeners other than subscribe to Farmer Jones?
Well, that doesn't matter. Check it out. Let me send you the official link. I have my backup channel because they've demonetized me. I had where I was super chat, but I have some like 1,200 videos up. You got to click on the video tab. But the bottom line is, I don't know. They don't love me. No final words other than we'll speak again, and maybe I'll do it where I can wear my shades so I can look as cool as you.
All right, well, go outside next time. Always a pleasure, Farmer Jones.
Yeah, I'll sit out on the porch.
Be safe.
Thank you, sir.
Ciao.